What is it?
27.
Huh?
Episode 27.
Very cool.
All right. Welcome back, folks.
Welcome back.
This is episode 27 of the Slide In podcast. That's Kelly Gallup. I'm Braeden Anderson. Kelly, haven't seen you in a while. How you been?
It's been nice. I've been great.
It's been nice. Okay, thanks. Glad I'm such a light in your life. All right. As normal, we're going to get into some user-asked questions. I've got a couple of good ones today, one of which is kind of one of our most requested topics to talk about.
By the way, I don't know what these questions are in advance.
Oh, yeah. That's the fun part. I never tell
Yes.
Kelly what they are.
I did a podcast with somebody, and they wanted to send all the questions in advance. I said, no fun. No.
Did you see, this is, I didn't actually take this comment down, but there's one guy who was a clinical psychologist who wrote in. Did you read that one?
Batshit crazy.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
He said essentially, it was a compliment, but he said,
fidget
individuals like yourself who are ADD, and I'd put myself in that boat, but maybe not quite as big of a boat, the inability to potentially succeed in a classroom, which you've been somewhat outspoken about your troubles with, can lead to success later in life. Like they're traits that maybe don't work in a classroom, but can work in the real world.
I also had the highest number of seventh hours ever in our junior high.
I presume that wasn't a good thing.
It didn't really bother me much, but it was, I had 51. And the principal, his name is Keith Evans, became a really good friend of mine and fishing partner. Mm-hmm. And he always would make fun about it. He goes, the next closest one was like 16. And he says, but the weird thing is every one of yours, there was never a negative. I was always messing with teachers or something. I put a pigeon in this lady's drawer one time, and she opened it. We never saw her again. I don't know if she went into the...
she shit her pants. That's what happened.
It was awful, but
sorry, I gotta go home.
It was very funny, but yeah, that school thing was just didn't mean much to me. All I was thinking about
struggled with it too.
Huh?
I struggled with it too.
I don't know. I got C's all my life and didn't give a shit, didn't pay attention, and now, regrettably...
Well, it's good you finally learned how to read.
I'd like to have a full sentence without one misspelling.
What was you, was it a teacher or one of your old friends who had the line about you writing versus reading books?
Mrs. Larson. Lynn Larson was her name. Favorite teacher in history. She was sure I was Archie Bunker until Lee Banks was the first black guy in our school, and I were best friends.
How old are you?
Yeah, exactly. But at any rate, she was on my second book came out, and it was in the paper, something about the first one hit 10,000, so I don't remember what it was, how it was in the paper. I don't have any idea what happened. But she was and I used to babysit her kids because I taught their kids how to ski, and I don't know, not much, but she's just incredible. But she was a raging liberal, and I was always like I was. She was one of the first women, and I'm not certain, but I think she was in a magazine like Time or one of those, doing the whole feminist movement, burning the bras, and in D.C.
No way.
She was very, and I found her just to be the coolest person. I just loved that woman, and at any rate, I'm sure she sees me walking downtown, and she runs across. It's just like any downtown Traverse City, and I'm not sure if the traffic went two directions in or what, but she just comes racing across, stopping traffic, screaming, "Stop! Stop!" I'm looking for like somebody I gotta, drill because they just took her purse or some shit, right? I'm looking for the bad guy, and she's like, she's coming at me, and I'm like, shit, I'm out of school quite a while. I don't know, maybe I got a late book or something. And so she comes hauling ass across, and she just goes, no, it's not, you're not supposed to be the writer, your brother is. You're supposed to be in jail. Well, I have been quite a bit, but let you out on good behavior.
Thanks for believing in me.
You're such a sweetheart. She is the funniest woman. Then she gave him a big hug and a kiss and ran away. Ooh, don't ever tell anybody that you like me. She's a liberal. I love that woman. She was absolutely one of the few classes I think I ever got A's in, just because she was a good teacher.
Well,
I had three of those. I got kicked out of a math class once. I was an asshole, and kicked 34 or 59 people out of his class. And I went to the principals and whatnot and says, is this not some sort of red flag for you? that 2/3 of us are gone, not quite, but it's like, no. So then he kicked me out, and I took the other class, Lemieux, Mr. Lemieux, I remember. And I got straight A's in that one, just because I had to go back and show that other jack wagon that, there, you're a shit. I walked in, I go, you're a really shitty teacher. I was trying to call him out. It's like, come on, you piece of shit.
I think it might have worked. I don't know.
No, he didn't take a swing.
There was one class where I kept having to go to the corner, face the corner and play with Play-Doh because I was mildly distracting to Paloma's Spanish class.
Isn't that like your major or some shit? Didn't you do that all through college?
No.
I thought you
I
said
took 6 years of it.
That's what you
between middle school and high school, but never was all that good, shockingly enough.
Shockingly.
So that was kind of
talking about.
That was
Oh, the
good
psychiatrist,
tease
the
of
psychologist or psychiatrist?
of this question that we've been asked a lot. I think we talked about in one podcast early on that we'd mentioned at some point, kind of shied away from it, but today we're going to get into it. So the most recent person who asked the question is Greg O'Neill 1. He said, question for the podcast. Why did you stop carrying SIMMS products? You said you were going to cover this in one of the podcasts, but never did. So, Kelly, why did we stop carrying SIMMS? Actually, his background real quick. We opened a new fly shop in Ennis, right?
Yeah. That was part of it, but man, it's a long story on this stuff because for as long as I've been in business, I mean, if you go backwards, I go back to John SIMMS, right? And then KC but also with Patagonia and also with Sage and also with a ton of people, a lot of things happen. And one of them, in the old days, we had territories, right? Like if you were a full-on dealer, you had this contract you signed, I think you might still, I don't know. It's been so long since I brought in a new product like that, but you signed and you got a territory. Mm-hmm. And so basically what they were saying is that they wouldn't open another shop within, I remember it might have been Cortland, I don't remember, and it was just, and you know, you're that high level dealer, right? You're doing enough volume that they're not gonna open somebody that close to you that would cut into your volume, and they would never go direct. Every company that I can think of, the big, like Sage, Patagonia, SIMMS, pretty big, right? They're like the biggest of the big, and they all had these contracts, and they said, you know, we won't change, your turfs and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, the turf thing just started shrinking, and it really, in reality, that part doesn't matter because people don't come to fly shop. And that was kind of our argument later on in life, is they don't come to your, like with SIMMS when I dumped them, they don't come to your shop because of the product. Right. They come to your store because they either like you or they like someone that they like working with human beings, right? Yep. And the whole business model of they're here simply to see the new SIMMS or whatever it is kind of antiquated. But the selling against us is not antiquated because now, for those of us who spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars to be active online, they're selling direct, right? And so that was a hit. But at any rate, with SIMMS, to get to the point, since all the venture capitalists came in and all the, what'd you call the? Private equity guys, the whole dynamic of our world is changing. It is, you know, we like to think of fly shops as like this, and the fly shop proper still is. It is still that thing where you go into the shop because you really like those people, right? You like the atmosphere, you like the feeling you get, you like their coffee. I don't know what it is, but you like something. They don't like ours.
They don't like our coffee. Coffee sucks.
Maybe that's why I'm quitting drinking coffee.
Jet fuel.
Because that's why that's tea, because of them. But the whole dynamic changed. And with SIMMS, when that private equity thing came in, and it's just all these giant conglomerate corporations that are buying these companies, and the whole direct with the manufacturer and the fly shop is just like nobody knows who the hell they are. Right. And with SIMMS proper, they weren't going to let me. I mean, it's why I got rid of them is that they weren't going to let me have product in Ennis, but I could have it online. And so, and Joe, they were worried about Joe Del Schneider, who owns Madison River Fishing Company. He's a friend of mine, very friendly. I see him in the bar, we're drinking, it's all fine, it's all good. And they were saying, well, they didn't want to hurt Joe's business. I says, yeah, I get that, but they were going to let me have it in a year. I said, so we're going to screw Joe for a year and then we're going to be good to go.
Yeah,
we're going to screw him in a year?
For eternity?
So I said, why don't you talk to Joe? I mean, Joe will tell you, that's not, and he did. He flat told them, that's not why people come to you. They come to them, it's come because they like the people. But the thing that pissed me off was that they were going to, not even that. The problem was, because, man up and just say what you mean. Don't be this mealy-mouthed piece of shit that says yes and that. Because I was able to put it online. I was able to have you walk in, come down, get on my computer and order it, try it on and take it.
Yeah, you remember we were thinking about putting an iPad in the front of the store that said how to order SIMMS?
Yeah, and so you could come and go. So
yeah, free shipping on all SIMMS.
So they wanted it always.
In store only.
And then it was like, you guys, this is just so wrong on a bunch of levels, right? It's just like, why, if we can have it anywhere, we can have it anywhere, right? And what is it? 42 miles between us and Ennis, right? And everybody knows we're there. And so it was finally, but it became so corporate. It's not down home. It's not talking to Casey Walsh anymore. It's not, or John, or, it was just became this thing. But it was like they wanted to see our online sales. They liked that. Yeah. But not in the store, which is 3 blocks from Joe. Joe has already told them, people don't come to your store because of your product. What's the difference? Just like Joe Moore did up in Big Sky with Squalla.
Right, yeah.
And he said, that's not the way the world works anymore. So
I'd be curious to hear from our viewers kind of on that topic of, do you go to a fly shop? I imagine there's some instances where somebody really wants one thing and they call around to figure out who has it. But I would imagine, like you said, most people go to a fly shop because they built a relationship there.
And that was the other thing. We could have the product there. We couldn't have it displayed.
Right. Yeah, we have it in the back.
You could call and say, do you got a whatever, G4, whatever it was, and say, oh yeah, we got 50 of them. Come on down. Yeah. But I couldn't have it displayed. Right. I mean, this is the most... it's politics. This is just why we're in the state of affairs we are in this world. It's like,
it's what happens with venture capital and private equity, right? Is they come in, they buy a company that they think has potential. It's underperforming, right? Otherwise, why would you buy something? Mm-hmm. And they're trying to realize that potential. So they're trying to trim fat. And what ends up happening is they change culture, right?
They change culture. They change the product. They change the development. They change the quality,
cost cutting,
cost, blah, blah, blah.
Now they have
and then they broom the son of a bitch anyway.
Right.
So where is SIMMS going to be when these guys decide, well, this isn't a fun toy anymore?
I don't know if this is, I heard a rumor, which is probably not great to be spreading online, but that SIMMS sold again to...
I don't pay attention.
I think it sold again to a private equity firm out of New York who specializes, maybe it's not out of New York, but they specialize in distressed assets. So that essentially Vista bought them for a massive number during COVID, right? When there was this huge influx into the sport, and the, we saw a drop off after that, right?
Sure.
There's now people leaving, so they bought it at this inflated number.
Drop off. We saw an incredible spike, but it wasn't a drop off from norm. Right. But yeah, then it wasn't going to.
Maybe it's a flat line instead of that exponential
400-800% growth in a year.
So they bought it thinking that was going to continue. Now, who knows where they're at with it?
People,
so, so let us know what you guys think of that. We We had a lot of discussions that winter about what to do about it. And I think,
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of emphasis people put on a product like it carries your store. People carry your store.
what was Chris's line again? Do you remember that?
No.
He was talking about, when we were talking about getting rid of SIMMS, he's like, well, SIMMS is synonymous with fly fishing,
he
right?
felt like he didn't feel like a shop was legitimate if they didn't have it when he walked in.
Right. And I think
And if that's the case, then you're in deep shit. You are in deep shit if you feel that some company that you don't even know who it's kind of how we've marketed this business. Not we. It's like there's this deep relationship with the company, and unless you work for the company, you have virtually nothing. I don't care how big you are. And it's like this. Who are you going to go talk to at SIMMS? Who are you going to go talk to at Patagonia? I mean, Patagonia, when I worked for them, they had, and we were a big dealer for Patagonia forever, but it really, you had like this much influence on the world, right? It didn't matter how big you were. It still goes back to, well, in that particular case, it's one guy who owns it. So obviously, I listen to anybody that walk in here, but I make the decision. So It's no different. It's still a company, right? Still has to be run. Somebody has to be the man and step up, whether it's a gal who owns it or whatever. Somebody has to make the decisions. And those people, once they go with that private equity things, who is that person, right? They might own 400 companies. And the guy who actually has the lion's share of that particular company may not, who knows who it is? That could be 70, 80, 100 people, 1,000, I don't know. And so it just becomes less of what a lot of people think our industry is, and just becomes this corporate thing where it's just so sterile. Like when John SIMMS owned it, or going back way back when with Patagonia, you could call Yvonne and you could, and things. But again, the second the world, when they lied and went direct, and you can't blame them because, again, everybody's trying to make money.
And it's good business on their part,
exactly.
Right?
And that, which just takes a little bit of the pie away from the guys who actually built their companies, right? And Patagonia was genius, right? Everybody that built that company, you know who built it? All those people have sent their free pictures in, so they could have their picture in the catalog. How genius is that? You're not going to get paid, but you will get the coat that you were wearing when you jumped off the cliff. Great for you.
If it's free, you're the product.
Yes. So, and then we build them. All those people build you, and then you get these stores who are just so in bed with these people. And you believe that we have this really close-knit relationship. And the next thing you know, by the way, we're going direct. Oh, the contract that you said you would never do? And we're going to get all this exclusive territory, which we don't have anymore.
Yep.
And then there's all kinds of restrictions on me doing things, but then when you put it on sale, and then it just erodes to a little piece at a time, right? Just a little piece at a time to finally end up and you say, oh, you're just a bunch of lying pieces of shit. You don't know me. We don't know you. It's all a pretend, you know? And there's still companies out there that are small enough, but it's getting harder and harder to find one that isn't, that's still owned by a person.
Right.
A single person or even a group, small group. And so...
Also, for those who might not know kind of how the business works, right? We are a reseller of sorts for the majority of the stuff in our store, right? So we buy it from the manufacturer. They sell it to us for X numbers of dollars. We mark it up and then sell it to the public. So then when the manufacturer decides they want to go to direct, then they're now selling it to the consumer at the full price, right? So they're making a huge margin on it.
There's no huge margins in this, but I've never been afraid. We make a 40 margin of 50. If you don't know what that, a 50 or a Keystone, if you pay 100, you get to sell it for 2. Most stuff has a locked price, right? A map. So you can't go above it. So any of the high dollar stuff, you can't, I mean. But on the low dollar or like materials or stuff that you're dealing with, it's $3 or $4. And whenever you think somebody's making a shit ton of money in the fly world, you need to come look at the book. And I have never had a problem telling anybody, especially somebody told me, walked in my shop once, oh shit, what was his name? And I kicked him. I says, you know what? You need to go down to Beulah Drug. Because he came in, he said, my chenille was a nickel more than Beulah Drugs. I said, you need to get your furry ass out of here and go back there. And he says, it's 38 miles. I said, we make 45 cents on that.
And how long do we stock it for?
And you got to have all the things.
I was thinking the same thing about like, somebody may think we're making a ton of money off a Berkheimer rod. When we have that Berkheimer rod for...
Yeah, you have one for 3 years or whatever, you sit
Right.
on it. It's not Kmart, it's not Walmart or whatever. I did read somebody, Kelly really aged himself with a Kmart. Yeah, I predate Walmart. Not predate Walmart, but before Walmart was in Michigan or here where I was, Kmarts were everywhere. And that's the other thing. There's a different way of buying for the giant stores. Like, just a full disclosure how this shit works in these businesses. Everything you see around you, I get 30 days to pay for, right? And so we carry $1 million stock. So I've had 30 days to pay for that. But in a big world like Bass Pro or something like that, Costco, 6 months or a year.
Right.
And anything left over, they don't have to keep. Yep. We don't get that shot. And so we have to pay for it all in advance. And the biggest margin that I can think of in our industry is 50%, which is you buy it for 100, you sell it for 200.
Right.
Now, simple math, if you buy in tens, what does that mean? Oh, and you pay shipping usually. So what that means is to break even, I have to sell 5 rods at full price. Not 10% or, hey, can you throw in a fly line? Oh, that's $100. What percentage is 10% of my profit just went up? 5 of them just came down the line. Wait a minute, now we got to sell 7 to break even. What do you mean?
And you got to pay the employee who is...
Yeah, or the shipping.
Right.
Or the shipping. So now, when you really get down to it, it's possible, very simply possible, it could be 2 rods at the end of the 10
that you're making money on.
That you're making money on.
Yeah.
But guess what? It took you a year to do, and there's a new model because Sage has to have one every 2 years.
So now you're putting
and now you're on cost, and you laundered for those son of a
now
bitches.
You're on sale.
But they got their money in 30 days. Right? We don't have that. I mean, at some points, we've got $300,000 worth of hackle hanging out or more. Well, nobody's paying that for us. Mm-mm. And so it sits there and sits, which is, in some ways, it's nice. It's not perishable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing we're not dealing in cheese.
So on the shipping thing, there's something that always makes me laugh. And I can't remember which dealer it is, but in one of our dealer portals, when you work in the shop, somebody comes in and they want a specific rod that we don't carry. They'll ask us to order it, right? So you jump into the dealer portal, add that rod to your checkout, and then in one of the dealer portals, you'll go to checkout and it says only $110,000 more till free shipping. Like, what? That's just insane. Perfect. So,
it's just, but I mean,
I know this all sounds like big gripe, right? Obviously, I'm sure you're very thankful to be in this business. But,
it's reality.
But it's not
Some days.
It's not as easy and painless as it looks.
I mean, we were talking about SIMMS and that dumping. The funny thing is after we dumped them, we put everything on sale. And there's still a few things out there that we haven't sold, not much. But SIMMS kept writing me. I think they still are. So if I don't stop this behavior, if I don't stop this, whatever it is, they're going to cancel my account. I'm like, well, no shit.
What do you think
that was 3 years ago.
Yeah. You can't break up with me when I broke up with you already.
It's over. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how, it didn't hurt Patagonia when they went direct, but they were always them. They weren't bought out. It'll be interesting to see now what happens, but they weren't bought out. Mm-hmm. And so you could still, and as all those big companies went, they were one of the best as far as being able to call and just, because you did have a really small.
They still do. I had Patagonia waders for a long time, and I wear Patagonia stuff in the winter to ski, and I had a problem with my pants, my ski pants, that the waterproofing didn't bond right, whatever. I tried a bunch of stuff. I called them and like, you get someone in
No, you always have.
in the U.S. though, you're not like in an answering machine.
Yeah, nothing's made in the U.S. with those guys, and
but
nothing's really even like you go to Patagonia. There's nothing there.
No.
But the people who design it and warranty and that stuff.
Yeah, it's all built elsewhere.
So that little bit.
But the actual customer service portion,
that's all right
and how
there.
they do fix things, like
Yeah.
you send your waders in or you send your ski pants in, whatever, they're working on them here. And then, I presume, actually don't know
They
that.
never made their waders here.
It was so fast that I
They just
assume
gave you a new
had to.
pair, probably.
No, they sent them back. They had patches on the inside that
Yeah, they
leaked
could do.
and
I don't know
dyed
how
my
they did
pants.
the wader thing because I know for a long time Quez made their wader. It was just offshore and then came in, but I don't recall how they did warranty. But they always had that was their deal.
Right.
It was a spectacular warranty.
Yeah,
No
the
matter
customer
what.
service is
I had
incredible.
a friend of mine, Polly, and her husband, I can't remember his name. They bought matching red guide jackets one time, which were their heavy duty. I think that was called a guide, heavy duty ski coat. And and I graduated with Polly, and she's driving down the road, and they see this whitetail jump a fence and hogleg itself. And their legs come through and catch the bottom one, it flips and they're kind of wrapped in that, and they're hanging there. And this little doe's hanging in this fence, kicking to crazy. And two of them get out, and they're both pretty tall people. I think Polly, and she's taller than I am. She's 6 foot probably, and he's a big guy. And they get out, they're brand new coats, literally left the store, I think. And they come back, and they're grabbing this deer. Well, it's kicking the living shit out of them, right? And when and so they undo the barbed wire, and it goes flying. It goes up and down. I think it was Polly's coat, and it just like shreds it. And his is getting kicked and getting hit by the barb. And they come back in. I don't know if it was the next day or might have been the same. I don't remember. Really, it was very, really shortly after they bought the coats. And I said, "Oh my God, you write this story and send that to Patagonia." They fixed their coat and sent them a new coat.
That's awesome.
And so because they did this, good deed for the Mrs. Doe, but so that was always good. But that was what you thought you were going to have with all the companies, right? You thought it was going to be like that, and then it goes corporate, and like I said, with Patagonia the bomb was always the guy, and lots of integrity. So now with these big corporate groups, and the funny thing is, when you call somebody, you say, "Well, I don't know. I'll have to check with this and this." It's like, oh God, wait a minute, stop this shit. Just be a company again. But it's gone. That ship sailed a long time ago. So that's why we dumped them, and it wasn't.
So I guess that's a plea to support your local fly shops.
Yeah.
If you're gonna buy online from a local fly shop.
Well, they're all local fly
Well,
shops.
no,
right
but there's
now.
some big, the big Ys of the world. There's some big.
You do have some pretty big corporate.
There's some
fly
big corporate
shops
ones out there now. But yeah, there's tons of small ones around. Small, right? But actually, real fly shops.
Yeah.
Us.
There's tons. Look around. Just wherever.
I won't name the others. Buy from us. This episode is brought to you by us. Buy things.
We just mentioned one a minute ago. We mentioned several.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we did.
Again, it doesn't kill anybody to go next door. It's just you'll know who you want to deal with.
Yeah.
You'll figure that out. It doesn't matter if it's in the store, online. I mean, the people that go the extra mile go the extra mile. Always will, always have. That's just business.
Okay, so hopefully we answered that one. If you guys have any follow-up questions, drop them in the comments.
I got to add a story to that. Ray Schmidt I don't remember what year it was, we were at the fly tackle dealer, and Ray brought the companies some of the bigger, and he worked for Sage for a long time, and he was bringing the contracts for them to sign if they wanted to do business with him. And it shut the fly tackle dealer show down for the Saturday night party. Nobody knew what was going on. All the companies were like, what the hell's this shit about? And Ray simply took their contracts and put his name at the top of them, right? And says, you need to sign this to do business with me. and they were flipping their shit out. They didn't know what to do.
Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun.
Yeah, the party's going. I think they just closed. They decided not to have the thing that night, and the whole thing was kind of a joke because Ray knew that they were just eroding our, our territories and shit like that. But it created quite a stink. I bet that was 20 plus years ago. It was just a joke. So.
I like that. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, Ray was great at that.
All right, let's jump into another question. This one comes from Bronson Craythorne, who's in a couple weeks ago. How could you not remember a name like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Said, hey, y'all, what is the dumbest/ugliest streamer you've seen that should not work but actually did? I've got a list of 17 of Kelly's flies.
Well,
not actually, but the anglerfish is one of them.
I was going to go the anglerfish, which I remember a comment somebody wrote in there, and they said, Kelly it was on the fly tying video.
Do you have it behind you right there?
I got the OG, I think. This was the OG that's all faded. There's nothing left. Mouse ate the orange out of it. And this one's commercial. I think this is the OG. I think this was the very first one because its placed legs are different where they belong and shit like that. But I have to talk to Jake about that. But this fly, this is my savior fly. When I'm getting my ass kicked and I can't figure out what to do, I jig a anglerfish. But this was, I don't know if I have it in here. This was one of my original, I sketch everything. And I've told this story 1,000 times because when I was doing the video, had nothing to do with, I was watching this thing on benthic zone fish. I know it's in here somewhere, and so I just sketched this thing out. It's in here someplace. I don't want to deal with it, oh no. Jumper. It was, I was just sitting there watching this thing on Sunday morning, and I'm sitting there, there's a big snowstorm, and I'm looking at this thing, and the anglerfish dangles this thing off his front. It's a little fluorescing thing. I don't know, how deep are they? I don't know,
they're like way down by the bottom. Yeah. I think they're bottom dwellers, right?
Yeah, but it's benthic, so it's got to be, I don't remember how many feet it is. Somebody, academic guy, the guy writes the 20 paragraphs, he'll tell me exactly.
I did want to give him a shout out at some point. We'll do that.
He's got some fun stuff. But at any rate, it dangles this thing, and I thought, what would that look like as a fly? I mean, its head's like this, right? It kind of looks like a rock. There's this little thing dangling, all of a sudden, poof, mouth opens up, and then goes to the minnow, right? And so that was the most ridiculous put together, because these things were supposed to be, this is the right length with I can't believe a mouse, which reminds me when you talk about pissed off. These were supposed to be its things hanging out there. It's going to scoop it in its mouth. And this was going to be the little fluorescing deal.
Up to 16,000 feet,
16,
by the way.
I know it was
pretty deep.
It was deep.
Couple months.
And so it wasn't really, I just came over and tied this fly in the winter. We weren't really even open, I don't think. And it was just for fun. I'm just trying to make a freaking anglerfish. That's why it's got such overdressed. This is so faded. It started out much darker olive like this. And it was just supposed to be this blob that looks back here, and its ass is the fluorescing deal and that whatever. And I took that thing out. I didn't fish it for 2 years. And first time I used it, absolutely annihilated it. So that would be number one.
And that was a day where they weren't eating anything, is that right?
That was on the South Fork. It was just me. I was in my sled, and I was on my favorite run on the canyon stretch, and I had made 3 passes through it. It's the absolute perfect day. It's 45 degrees. It's rainy. It's cloudy. It's November. I mean, I should be just wrecking house. And I can't buy a fish. And I'm on my 3rd run going through it. And here I go, and I stopped to eat lunch, and Dudley went, because when I pull up, I pull into shore, drop the anchor out the front, and the dog goes running out. Well, he does that, and he skids off 2 fly boxes that are in the front, and he kicks one back, and it's open, and that anglerfish fell out. And I had had it for 2 years and did not fish it.
The light shone down on it.
It was just on the floor. I picked some bitch up. I go, well, nothing else has worked in my favorite run. I put it on. I think first pass I got 3 fish, and I got 1 giant. And then I did the pass another, and then I fished it all the way back to Wolf, and just put a reckoning on. I mean, it was just life-changing. But that was my best day ever with it. But it's always been one of these things where I wait, and I'm like, oh shit, anglerfish. And I put it on. It's not fishing, nothing's happening. I was fishing with Doug Pauline. We went from Glen to Notch. We are 100 yards above Notch. I told you about that when we filmed with Johnny.
Yeah.
And on that corner, and he goes, if you were half as good as you say you are. So first of all, I never say I'm good. Second of all, we're getting our ass kicked. He goes, if you were half as good as you say you are, you pull one out of your ass. And I looked down, it's anglerfish. Put it on, got pretty close to a 2-footer on the first cast. It was right on that corner. Remember we were on that corner?
Yeah.
And I was like, nobody's more surprised than I was. We've tried everything on earth. I mean, we had just been, it was a 0-eat day, I think. 0.
It's amazing how many of those I have.
Yes.
Quick break. We're back.
Just a quickie.
Wait, what?
Stop it. Kind of cold in here today.
All right, what were we talking about?
I fancy vest. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nice. Ugly
the fly
flies.
fly that.
So we did anglerfish.
Anglerfish, absolutely number one.
I can think of. I don't think it's ugly. I fish it a ton, but Jake and Chuck cannot stand the double screamer. What's his name down at Beartooth?
Danny.
They can't
fly
stand that fly for some reason. I don't get it. They think it's a bastardization of fly tying. I don't mind it. I don't think it.
I think it looks kind of thrown together in some ways. I don't give a shit thing.
It fishes so well.
Crazy.
It's a great bug. Both of them.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't think of any that.
Tell you every fly I ever tied that actually worked. It's like a whoa.
I can't think of any that were. Some of Russ's stuff, I thought, especially his new stuff, I thought was kind of like Russ Madden's.
Oh, you know what I don't like? I don't like the chenille heads on peanuts, on circus peanuts. I know they fish great.
I like it better.
I don't like how they look.
Yeah, well,
I think they're ugly.
When I first, that's the original.
Yeah, I know they fish great, but
I can't think. There's a lot of the newer giant stuff that I thought was just. I see a lot of stuff that was thrown together. That's why I brought up Muskie Fools when they did their roast, and I told people to watch it because they have this roast, and they go through and pick the fly apart, and these are giant flies. These are musky flies, right? But they get the whole, like if it has a purpose to stall, if it has this or that, they understand what's making it do things. And so, y'all, listen, you know who that is? That's the squirrel. That's the mayor and the squirrel. One runs this place and the other one runs this place. So they're loud. They're getting their asses chewed. So they're a squirrel. Yeah, that's the squirrel voice. So, what was I talking about?
Musky Fool.
When those guys,
flies.
When they dissect a fly, they're not being dicks like, occasionally they are. They're just having fun with it, like, I think your color's wrong, whatever that. But usually they're saying, well, this thing's not going to do this. Now you're talking about a fly that's sufficiently big to actually not do something. You talk about our little trout shit. Most of it's going to wiggle around and do its thing, whether it's overdressed, whether it's, it's maybe doesn't stall quite as quick. Like a lot of the new, like Chuck ties and all the guys tie, a lot of those new brush heads and body, I think, are just so grotesquely overdressed, but they swim. They've figured out ways to do it. And that's how those guys were, when they're picking these guys' flies apart, they have a purpose, and so, and the anglerfish kind of had a purpose when like things were a long ways away. Like when I first did this tail, it's 1.5 inches away, right? It was supposed to be out there doing its little flutter, attracting the, if he does it, the anglerfish does it. He is the anglerfish. So I mean, Jesus, you kind of got to listen to him. But with the trout world, it gets a little bit. We maybe don't put as much emphasis on actually knowing why we're putting them together, right?
Right.
And so when I see those, and I can't really think of many, all the ones I mentioned are ones that I thought, and I don't think I clarified that, I didn't think they would swim, or I didn't think they would do this or that right.
Right.
And they do. They did it really well. I mean, in particular, Russ's flies doesn't do things by mistake. And he goes out and watches them swim. And if they don't make it, they don't make it. They just don't get produced. And so, but the anglerfish for me, I'm trying to, the mop. That would be, in the nymph world, the mop would be the first fly that I absolutely didn't think.
The peeler.
The peeler, well, all that bent hook stuff, the peeler for me was, that fly, the first day I fished it on the Stone, we just clobbered it. We wrecked it.
Really?
And when you looked at that thing, you're talking about the keel hook, the original bucktail peeler, that thing absolutely wrecked house. And it's got such a perfect swimming silhouette, and nothing that can hinder it, because everything's tied off the top of the keel. And so the feather and the hair is just doing its thing. And,
For the first time in, I don't know, maybe a year, I threw the stack blonde the other day.
Yes.
That may be, it's right up there with my favorite flies to fish.
Absolutely weightless.
So fun to cast, so easy.
And when you
always high in the column, the yellow one in particular.
If you think about it, the peeler just simply had a cone head on it.
Right.
There's not really much difference. Yeah. And it's all, and by the way, the stack blonde is just, I say it every time, so I did that fly because I didn't tie the Joe Brooks version of the blonde well. And I've told this story many times, and when I was doing the fly time video on it, that in the book, they're much different. They're on Atlantic salmon hooks, and they're so full and thick. And then Joe Fields gave me a real one that Joe Brooks tied for him. Looked like shit, just like mine did. I did all this effort to get this big, thick body. I have it over at the house.
Yeah.
And it's got the article and Joe Brooks signed it and all this stuff, and it had been fished. But I mean, it wasn't that giant profile. We'll show that picture. Don't let me forget. I have a picture of it on my phone. But we'll show the picture of the flies that are in trout, and they're the most magnificent, just perfectly tied with this, just looks like a huge gob of bucktail. And then I saw the original, the real ones. Doesn't look anything like
Nothing like
it. Nothing like
Jeez.
The ones in the book are prettier, but they're probably not as accurate. And there's some discussion whether that's a comet or a blonde. Joe Brooks calls it a blonde in his book, but the comet series is much the same with the coming out of the middle. I was always under the influence that the comet was the saltwater version, kind of tied the same. Somebody will write me and tell me, I'm sure. They always do. But the one that's in the book is much the same, where it's tied with the middle has one stack and the front has a stack, which is the comet style. Mm-hmm. I was always I was foregoing the middle stack and trying to get as much of that thickness out of the front as I could. Mm-hmm. And they tipped sideways, which I thought was bad. Oh no! Well, that was a long time ago.
Right.
And now,
you've changed your
and the
thinking
keel hook straightens it more.
Yeah.
And I almost wish somehow I could get it to flip
back on its side.
Yeah, on its side. So that and the Barely Legal does that. And my original Barely Legal was tied on a B10S front hook, and it had a bead, it had a 3/16 tungsten bead, and then it had the regular tail, and it flipped upside down constantly. I kept trying to fix it, but it just was crushing fish. And finally, people writing into me all the time, my fly's tips on its side. I say, yeah, don't worry about it.
Keep it that way. It's okay.
Keep it that way. It works. That's why when you look at anything, it kind of does that. So I don't know.
What do you think of the wire worm?
That's another one I didn't think would work.
I think it's so ugly. We used to call it the grease worm. We had another name for it. I can't really say on YouTube, but
yeah, and of all places,
that's a hook that gets them too.
Oh, that thing's huge. And where did it? The first place I saw it was on the Beaverhead. Of all rivers, that tiny little ditch. I mean, hell, it's like this deep in a lot of all places. I would have never guessed. I don't know if that's where it came from. First place I saw it really popular was on that river. And it's such everything else is like micro everything, right? And then here's this freaking worm on a big old bass hook. And I was like, oh my God, that'll never work until you throw it.
I had a family friend who invited me over to his house one time to give me a bunch of flies. Very generous guy. And he pulled open all these boxes that his dad had. His dad was a huge fisherman and had died recently. He had, those like the giant nymph boxes that are, the 8x11 almost.
Yeah.
He had 3 of them completely full of wireworms, every different color and size you could imagine. And he fished in Idaho a lot. And he goes, when you can't buy one, wireworm.
Yeah.
I went, okay, I don't think I'm going to take those, but thank you.
That's no different than the gummy worms when they came out. I'm like, oh my God, what's next? Fish, that's what's next. They eat the shit
I think I talked about it a while back, but when those guys found out that tarpon were eating worms, the worm hatch, which Jeremy and Chris were just down there with
they killed it.
Nicholas. Yeah, they got into him. He said they pretty much exclusively fished worms.
That's what Andy said. The same
life,
thing.
yeah. Any more ugly flies that you thought would never work but did? Anything that came into the shop?
Leg.
Yeah, Pat's rubber leg.
Yeah, which is really
all the junk flies, if you will.
If
chartreuse
Pat's rubber leg
eggs.
really, if you look at the original, I think, which predates all that rubber leg shit, is in the 40s, is the Michigan wet skunk, and it's black with white legs, and that fly still, have you ever watched any of Alex Lufka's videos fishing?
A little bit, yeah.
I don't think Alex ever fishes without a Michigan skunk. And that goes back to the 40s. Black.
Yeah, that is an ugly fly.
It is. They eat the shit out of it.
Looks like an Oreo.
They eat that thing to death. They eat it here.
Yeah.
I was over on the Wind with Darren one day. I can't remember my guide's name that day. Nice kid. And they fish a micro one. And it's this big, but it's just black with white legs. Same thing. It's a Michigan skunk. But
strikes me as something you could swing for a steelhead.
You could do anything with it. I've caught bass, trout, steelhead. I don't know what I haven't caught on that fly. And now I caught the steelhead on it. It was dirty water, and I was kind of slow jigging. I just had it as my dropper fly, and nobody was more surprised. I was really fishing trout.
Yeah.
I got a drop back steelhead, which will eat anything.
Right.
They're starving to death. I mean, that is the most. I mean, if you want to go fish steelhead on a fly, I mean, not swinging, but just actually go and fish them. You fish dropbacks. They are just so aggressive. That's kind of where the TNA bunker, that original style of shaped head and articulating a fly, that had a two-part full. Part of it was for rainbows and for dropbacks.
Wasn't that video of Russ and Alex fishing dropbacks? Chuck, was that them fishing dropbacks?
Yeah, on the PM?
Yeah, where they're stripping for them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, they're so aggressive, those fish. And they don't necessarily have to be dropping, like going downstream.
Right.
On the big Manistee, I would fish them like that because I could see them. I could actually see these 8-10 pound fish going downstream, and they'd come and get it. They'd break off their path and come and get it. But they can just be sitting up, right? They're just done spawning, and they're just heading back to the lake at some point, but they've got to eat. And
Okay, so I think that actually segues us into another question that I had highlighted for today's episode, which is from Bearhawk Life on YouTube. He said,
what is it?
Bearhawk Life.
Bearhawk.
I assume that's a he. I could be wrong. Sorry if you're a lady. When you are sight fishing a big fish with a streamer, how far in front of him do you cast? Oh, his name's Jay.
Jay.
Thanks, Jay. So I want to hear what Kelly said, obviously. I'm sure all of you do too. I had a moment with my buddy Jack up between the lakes the other day in Jacqueline's Hole. We're putting our stuff on, and I'm just peering down into that little inside flat, right, above the tree, below the cliff. And see two big fish swimming around. One of them looked like about a 2-foot brown. The other one's probably 21. And we're like, oh, all we had with us were streamers. I would have loved to go throw a dry dropper at that fish, kind of team fish it. But I went down, Jack stayed up on the cliff. So there's tons of glare out, right? I couldn't see from down there, so Jack's calling out the fish's movements. And then all of a sudden the fish moves into his glare, into my sighted zone, the smaller of the two. I threw too close to it, and that fish kind of rockets off and turns around. So I pick it up, lead him a little bit more and strip it away, and he rocketed over and ate. And then I was laughing like a child and proceeded to lose the fish. But I'd love to hear your take on how far in front you want, or how much sight fishing with streamers do you do?
Up there you do it a lot,
Yeah.
if you're paying attention. I mean, you can, not just in that pool, but that whole upper river, you can do it. Some days you can get where you can see them. But kind of like when we were talking I don't know what episode it was, about the, by the way, I took an extra, what I'm pissed about today is seasonal allergies.
Oh my God,
And
I'm getting wrecked by them.
I took a whole pill this morning, which I never do, take a half pill.
I don't even know how you can take half of one of those little Costco pills.
Just break them in half, down they go. But I took a whole one, and then I got thinking I didn't, for whatever reason. And so I took another halfer, whatever piece, more like a quarter that I break off the tip when I got here. So I'm having a little flashback, probably literally to the 70s, where it's a little purple around. My nose is itching. It's like, no, wasn't that. I'm not smelling anything. And it's like, as if I don't do this enough. Now everything's like, got that little purple haze. So that's
I feel like I have
part
a
of the
film
nose
over
picking
my
today.
eyeballs.
And so, but at any rate, what were we talking about? Oh, leading a fish. When we talked about things before, about fishing them on the surf, and fishing big browns and steelhead and stuff out in Lake Michigan, around the piers and stuff. And we segued into tarpon and not commenting on their dominant eye and stuff like that. It's, to plop one on one's head is generally, because the water's usually not that fast. And like back home in Michigan, where you would see, if you're paying attention, you could set up and find them. And I would always try to not go across the fish's head. This, just like Andy said with tarpon, don't come into its dominant eye like racing at it. It'd be like, this would literally be like a gazelle standing in, and getting sideways to a lion and just going, kiss my ass, and I'm gonna, when's that gonna happen, right? The lion's gonna run too. But the lion might turn around and eat it. But if you startle that fish, because you're not fishing very deep if you are sight fishing. I mean, that Jacqueline's might be but that's a really.
Oh, where that fish was, it was maybe 1.5 feet.
Okay.
It was on that very inside.
I mean, but you get up on that point, where it kicks out the water. If you're standing up by where you park, lots of times, if you get it right, you can see that whole pool.
Oh, you can see everything up there.
But that's not reality when you're down, unless you're tag teaming and you get somebody up above there. But that's not what, if I'm sight fishing, and I've had lots of opportunities to do that on the white. The one thing I never do is try to cross the fishes. Like, nature doesn't make shit easy, right? They don't just run right up to the predator. It's just, and so we get this idea, it all goes back to bait fishing when you're a child, to put it right in their mouth, right? Just let it go down the stream and they'll see the worm and they'll just bounce him in the nose and eat it. And so I like to escape. I like him to see it, but I don't want it to bounce, right into his head so much. Now it depends. And if I was jigging the fish up, I'd have it coming below the fish and jigging up and going down like this, but I'd still kind of go away from I would go away from his actual head, right?
Right.
If it's upstream of me, I'd go quite a bit. I'd want to go 2 foot above it to make him come out and get it. And there's too much chance that you could, come right at that dominant eye thing.
Yeah.
Right? I want it to come, it's going to flee. And ideally, I could come right across stream and not even necessarily be coming down at that fish. I would rather go straight across in front of it, but maybe a foot or 2, even more. The fish is going to feel it coming.
Oh,
and it's going to take off and
when I
whack
actually
it.
got this one, right, I think my first cast was somewhere between 5 to 7 feet from it. And it did that kind of spin, like it didn't like
felt
it.
it.
Yeah. And then the next one was 15, 18 feet away. And the moment it landed, I did 1 jig and it was there.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable
instant.
how fast it moved.
It's instant. And that's the thing is, if it goes right, they're already on, that's what you have to get in your mind, that they are not visual feeders. They are so much more lateral line feeding, and that they feel that fly hit 10, 15 feet away, just like it was right on top of them.
Yeah.
They're feeling it, and they're on. That's go time.
Well,
right?
this fish was, we watched it for a while. We watched the pair. It was 2 fish. They were never very close to each other. And originally we thought they might be rainbows because they were so shallow and there are some reds around there. But the longer we looked at them, they're definitely brown trout and they were definitely hunting. They were going, it looked like trying to dig up eggs off reds. Like they were almost tailing. Definitely digging around in the mud and trying to flush something out. I don't know what. But
There's probably a red above it, 20, 30 feet.
yeah. But they were definitely hunting. So, that fly lands a long ways away and that fish is there immediately because he sees it as...
Well, there's a whole chain of life in that scenario if you pay much. I had such a unique, not unique, there was thousands of us back there in Michigan, but when you have salmon and steelhead, so you got a steelhead comes into the spring and digs nests and, digs its reds, dislodges the living shit out of bugs, and some of those salmon in particular use complex bedding where they come in and multiple fish use it over and over and over and over and over and over. And I've seen salmon runs with 30 different sets on them spawning, just kicking up. And you want to see the chain of life thing, you just watch below those things. And you'll see your little rainbows or brown trout, juvies, getting the eggs and getting the thing, and then you see a real one, game over, gone goes middle minnow, right?
Yep.
He'll come in and they eat the neighbor's kids, say it always. They'll come in and just annihilate those things. And so, we used to do it a lot where we'd run streamers behind those, in particular where you get those big complex spawning sets, and you get sometimes 30, 40 yards their feeding activities going on below them. When you got 30 salmon up there kicking around, or 20, whatever, you got a 30-pound fish sitting there digging its tail into that gravel. Shit's going crazy.
Right.
And all those fish go in there. So it's very simple to think that there would be, bunch of little juvenile brown trout or rainbows in there, and your fly just mimicked what he saw. But for Jay's question about rather where do I put it, it's going to be, I will always go a pretty good piece above it. And depending on the depth of the water, I have a real hard time getting really shallow water fish to come to a fly. They either do or they don't. There's no in between. There's no give it its 20th cast, made it, they're done. And when I do get that opportunity and I know it's there, I would say 6 feet would be like right in that zone where I'm going to throw and see, and if you can see the fish, you'll see if they juice.
Yeah.
You'll see if they get that peck, their fins get tight.
The
they get
gills
that
out.
thing. I watch their fins more. I just see the pie, and they'll do that little sharky thing. Even if they don't move, right? They'll do this thing, right? And then they're just completely juiced. Right? And the next one, might be a different angle slightly, but it's going to be maybe just a touch closer, but not much. Because once they're juiced, it's almost impossible. And the other side of that, if they don't move at all, they don't move. For me, I mean, I've never had one where I get like, and I've anchored up on a shit ton of them, and I've talked about flower flats a lot, about back on the Asaba where I got most of my fish over 27, and those fish I'd find them. I'd get it in those. There's a bunch of back then. I don't know if they're still there. The watercress beds, and I'd get one on one of those watercress beds, and I could tell if he was nose down underneath them, and he was locked in. It was just like he's probably not going to move. But if I get one, just slide back just a little ways, and just kind of swim in there, lazy, but he's going to play.
Then you got a chance.
Yeah, he's going to play. And so,
I think
but they either, like I said, they either got that posturing right out of the gate, or I never got them.
Yeah. I think in New Zealand they call that term, or they call that lack of activity from a fish doggo.
Doggo? I like it.
When the fish just shuts down, right? It's there. I mean, you could basically
And they
grab it by the tail.
And they do tons of that.
Yeah.
They're
all sight fishing.
Yeah. And I'd like to have Peter on here, Cardi, see if what he had to say about, because he's a streamer guy down there. And that's that. But, I've always likened it to they're successful a lot. So if you got a 14-inch, brown trout in your stomach, you're probably doggo.
Right. Yes. I remember being down on a Spring Creek near Oregon, or in Oregon near Bend, and I just really gotten into fishing, still didn't know anything about it, and saw this huge rainbow laid up. It was the fall, so I know it wasn't spawning. Well, I guess it could have been an eagle lake fish, but didn't think about that. But it's laid up in pretty shallow gravel, and it's just sitting there. It's not moving. I had a little black leech on. It's late in the day. I haven't had a fish move to a fly yet. I'm bored as shit. So I'm sitting there just like throwing it in front of the fish, stripping it past me, like waiting for my buddy to come back downstream. I finally get it right in front of the fish's face. He just whacks it. And I broke him off because of a shitty knot. But
yeah, that's how we used to fish steelhead in Michigan when I first started.
Piss them off, put it in front of their face so many times until they eat it.
We were fishing number 4 Colorado spinners. If you don't know, that's a blade that big around. It's a swivel to a swivel with the blade to another swivel to your hook. And we fished fly rods, but it was a different world. I'm talking about the 60s, right? And the steelhead there was nobody around. They were much more stable to idiots like me, who's 10, 12 years old. And we would take on a fly rod, and you would throw that spinner into the bed and just wiggle your hand, right? And it would go through, and there'd be like one hen and 4 males, right? And they're all fighting for position, and you just keep doing that. And then all of a sudden, one would just roll out and just annihilate that thing. It was most of that water is 2 foot deep, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you might sit there for whatever it took.
Right.
But it's a freaking blade that big around, and it would go like hit the water. So you could
Sorry if you guys have headphones in.
Yes, right. Bang. It was like you could feel that spinner, and they would come and eat it, And that's really how, there weren't really many people fly fishing them back then, right? And so when we started, because we didn't know shit, we started swinging flies at them, just, West Coast style. But we did the same thing.
Yeah,
We
right
just
over the
swing it right through their beds.
The dangle right in front
And I
of
never dangled on them. We'd always swing them. And for me, even as a child, just to see one come off that red and clobber that fly, I actually like the spinners better, actually, because there was so much poof. And man, when they ate that thing, that was pretty. I remember standing on the Platte River looking downstream. There were like 8 beds that I can see. I'm the only person there, right? And just go down. But it's pretty cool. You learned a lot about fighting fish. You learned a lot about a lot of things. And we never snagged a fish. That's the crazy thing. Started throwing flies, snagging them constantly. You just snagging them in the ass and the fin and this and that. But those spinners,
They knew it was there. Yeah.
they got out of the way. They chased some bitch out and ate it. It was now if you do a MEPS, I did number 2 MEPS quite a few times, and usually it's right in front of the dorsal. Oops, sorry, buddy.
All right, so we did what you're pissed off about already.
What was it?
Allergies.
Oh yeah.
Unless you have another one, or you'd save it for next show.
I just thought I had one that wasn't. I'm not pissed about it. I just found it humorous. For those of you who aren't watching, if you want to know how much it takes to work here, I didn't write this, but this is the
Kelly's holding up a jar of peanut butter.
jar of peanut butter with the word mice on the front, right? And then on the next thing it says mouse butter. And then you keep turning it and it says do not eat. Do we really need, is there somebody in here that dumb?
Yes.
So-
He's sitting at the desk and his name's Chuck.
Is that why? So
He
if
just put his hand up.
if you're wondering what it takes to work here, you need to be smart enough not to eat the peanut butter that's been in this room for 5 years for the mouse traps.
It's a low bar, but I'm glad we have it.
I never saw the do not eat until this morning.
Yeah, do not eat.
I never.
I also like that the mice has a little smiley face at the end of it.
And that must be Chris did
It's
this.
got to be Chris. It's a nice
he's-
touch.
Very artistic guy. No, I had nothing.
All right, you got something from behind the desk you want to show the people?
Ay, ay, ay. We talked about these.
What about that?
Talked about the hula girls.
What's that little solid? I don't even know what to call it. It's like rubber fly, whatever that thing is.
That's a guy from Michigan. It's really cool.
Yeah, I remember watching you fish it once, and I can't believe it didn't get clobbered. Nothing was eating anything.
Yeah, nothing
that day,
ate.
though.
And we should have put it back. And I lost one. I didn't want to lose this one, so I wouldn't fish it near anything.
If that guy's watching, send a few more out if you would.
Schultze, this is that floating plug. I forgot the kid's name. For those of you who aren't watching, I got it at Schultz's. Mike sent me a thing saying thanks for calling him out for something. I said, I call you out all the time. This plug, it's just round latex and it's a popper and it's solid and then he's put resin on it. It is the closest thing to a topwater spook that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this thing, it's a tube bait, that's all it is. And it's just solid latex.
I'm doing a terrible job of getting a picture or video.
And I had 3 or 4 of them. I've got one at my box. It's supposed to be a topwater bug. We got Bill saying we can talk about one of these days about when we shot that show in it.
Oh yeah, I'm working on that one right now.
And but
That is cool though. That was maybe the coolest fly I've ever seen fished.
I mean, when it comes to spook style stuff, which is a topwater walking the dog,
Right.
I still am surprised. We didn't even get a roll.
No, but
I have.
remember nothing was wrong.
Nothing.
Nothing was
that
moving
was
on anything.
last ditch effort.
Yeah.
Got to be something more interesting up there. A lot of those flies up there from the. We did the shaved merkins and all that stuff.
Let's just do that for this one. We'll do another one next episode.
We'll have to. Somebody send something cool. Yeah. The rest of it's just fodder.
All right. You got a band of the week?
Grand Funk.
Grand Funk. All right, I'm going Creedence. I don't know how we haven't said that yet.
Who's Our Country?
Oh, we're doing that too. Let's go.
Keith Whitley.
Culture Wall.
Huh?
Culture Wall.
Very good.
Ode to
That's all you
older
get for
times.
today.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Like, subscribe, comment, set notifications. That's a new one somebody told me to do.
What's that mean?
You can hit the little bell below the video, and it will notify you when we drop a new episode.
Yeah, I need that. I never know you would do this shit. I have no idea.
It's crazy. Tuesdays at 10 every week. Either put it in your calendar, hit the bell. Yeah, a guy I was on a bachelor party with who doesn't fish at all said he liked, subscribed, and hit notifications. And I was like, what's that? Awesome. Thanks for teaching me. Thanks, Ty.
Wasn't that interesting?
Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Great. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.